Hey, I'm Alan Lopez, and I'm going to be your guide as we go through the Anaheim Cemetery and learn about some of the people that were instrumental in the founding of First Presbyterian Church of Anaheim. And here we have Blanche Morley. Blanche joined First Presbyterian in 1912 and was a member until the day she died in 1989. So for almost 77 years she was a member and probably held the longest membership in First Presbyterian. Blanche also wrote the 1989 history of the church. Here we have Theophilus Beasley and his wife Mary. Reverend Beasley was the pastor of First Presbyterian Church from 1893 until 1895. He was born in England, studied at the London Theological Seminary, and then pastored in Australia. He came to America in 1870, where he became a naturalized citizen. Here we have Henry Dean Hohemus, who was an early member of First Presbyterian Church. Henry was born in Valparaiso, Chile, where his father served under President Tyler's administration. Henry was a hospital steward during the Civil War in the 23rd New Jersey Infantry. His headstone mistakenly says 32nd Infantry. After the war, he came to Anaheim and grew walnuts and became a member of First Presbyterian. Lemuel Peterson Weber, the first pastor of First Presbyterian Church. On March 20th, 1870, the church called him from his pastorate in Santa Clara, California, where he resigned and came to First Presbyterian and became the first pastor. You see on his headstone here, it has a pretty good mini biography of him. He was born in Salem County, New Jersey on June 8, 1832. He died in Anaheim September 25th, 1874. He had tuberculosis, which is why he only lived 42 years, but in those 42 years he had many accomplishments. Here he graduated from Williams College in Massachusetts. One of his classmates was James Garfield, who went on to become President of the United States. He studied theology at Lane Theological Seminary. And Lane was well known for his contributions to the abolitionist movement before the Civil War. Licensed by the Presbytery of Dayton, Ohio in 1860. He pastored in Indiana, and then he came to California and crossed the state into Austin, Nevada, which was a thriving silver mining town in what was then the territory of Nevada. From Austin, he went to Santa Clara, California, and while he was traveling between the two, he stopped in Carson City to spend some time with his friend, Reverend A.F. White. While he was there, his son died. And then he went to Santa Clara. And when he came from the east to California, he crossed Panama, and his wife came down with what was then known as Panama fever. 5 months after he got to Santa Clara, his wife succumbed to the disease. He went back to Carson City, dug up his son's grave, brought him back to Santa Clara, and buried him next to his mother. And he was at Santa Clara when he received the call to come to Anaheim. While he was pastoring in Anaheim, he received the rights to some land just northwest of town, and he founded a city that he named after the Westminster Confession. And he also started the church there, and he pastored both churches in Westminster and Anaheim. He married his late wife's sister after he came to Santa Clara, and she was with him till the day he died. And she went back to New Jersey after he passed away and was remarried and had more children. Next to Reverend Weber, we have Lot Jaquette, who was Reverend Weber's second cousin and also the brother of Reverend Weber's two wives. He came to California to help Reverend Weber with the Westminster Church, and like his second cousin, he also died young from tuberculosis. have the private mausoleum of August Langenberger. August was the first person living in Anaheim who was neither Mexican nor Indian. He came to Anaheim and ran a general store before the German settlers first settled Anaheim. His first wife was Petra Ontiveros, whose father was the original landholder of this area, having received a land grant from Mexico. He sold the German settlers this land, which became Anaheim. After she died, he married Clementine Schmidt, and the three of them are buried here. And he was one of the first members of First Presbyterian Church. And here we have Dr. James Gardner and his wife Maria, who were early members of First Presbyterian. And just to have some friendly Christian fellowship, right next to them is Ezra Kellogg, who was the first pastor of St. Michael's Episcopal Church. And here we have Thomas and Emma Grimshaw. The Grimshaws were early members of First Presbyterian. Mr. Grimshaw was born in England, and he learned to build railroad trains. That profession brought him to South America and Mexico for 5 years. From Mexico, he came to California and settled in Anaheim, where he built carriages. His time in South America and Mexico taught him the Spanish language, and that became useful when he became a liaison between the Mexican Presbyterian Church and First Presbyterian. Mrs. Grimshaw was a member of the Kramer family who founded the city of Placentia. She lived to be 92 years old, and when she died, she held the longest membership in First Presbyterian. Mr. Grimshaw was known for his singing ability and led the choir. They were also instrumental in raising money for the first Anaheim library. Here we have George Irwin, who was pastor of First Presbyterian from 1885 until 1888. He was born George Irvin, later changed his name to Irwin, and he is buried under his name Irvin. He was the first superintendent of schools for Fort Wayne, Indiana, where one of his students described him as a liberal user of the switch as well as of chewing tobacco. He came to California after he served in the Civil War as a chaplain in the Indiana Infantry. Somewhere in this section of the cemetery is Patrick McKinney and his wife Ann. They are in an unmarked grave, so I don't know exactly where they are, but they were very important to the founding of First Presbyterian. Patrick McKinney was an elder before First Presbyterian was founded, and he wrote the letter to Reverend A.M. Stewart asking that a Presbyterian church be built here in Anaheim. He was also a contractor, and he built the first building of our church, along with the first building of St. Michael's Episcopal Church. Well, I hope you've enjoyed this tour through the Anaheim Cemetery, learning about some of the early members of First Presbyterian. Watch for more videos on the history of First Presbyterian as we celebrate our 140th anniversary on March 7th, 2010.